Ladies, let's stop playing games for a second and ask the real question. What do men truly want? Not the surface level answers, not the Instagram filters, not the temporary thrills that fade after a night. I'm talking about what a man, with vision, with values, with purpose, really wants in a woman. It's not just beauty. Let's be honest, beauty is everywhere. Filters have made average look exceptional, but substance. That's rare. A man who knows who he is will never be satisfied with a woman who only knows how to be pretty. He's not looking for a decoration. He's looking for a foundation. He wants peace, not performance. He wants depth, not drama. He wants a woman who doesn't need to be the loudest in the room to feel powerful. A woman who can command respect not with her volume, but with her presence. Her calm is not weakness, it's power under control. Let me tell you something. Val, your man is tired of the chase. He's exhausted by women who play games, who confuse chaos with passion, who measure love by attention instead of connection. He wants clarity. Simplicity, realness. He doesn't want a woman who begs to be seen. He wants a woman who sees herself clearly. And here's the truth. When a man is in his purpose, when he's tasted discipline, fought his demons and built something for himself, he doesn't want to be your father, your therapist, or your emotional punching bag. He wants to build a life with someone, not save someone from hers. That's why confidence is so attractive. Not arrogance, confidence, the quiet kind, the kind that says, I'm not perfect, but I know who I am. He wants a woman who doesn't need him, but still chooses him. Who doesn't manipulate with silence or attention games, who understands that femininity is not weakness, it's a force, a soft, powerful force that doesn't compete, it completes. You want to know what really scares most men? A woman who's whole because she won't settle, she won't shrink to fit in, she won't stay where her spirit is suffocating. She will walk away with grace because she knows her worth isn't up for negotiation. And let's get one thing straight, submission is not about obedience, it's about trust. A man doesn't want a servant, he wants a partner, someone who can walk beside him, not behind him, someone who can challenge him without emasculating him, someone who knows how to lead with softness and strength at the same time. That's the woman he dreams about. That's the woman he stays loyal to, not because he has to, but because he wants to. Men don't want a perfect woman. They want a real one, real over perfect every single time, because real is rare. So stop asking what men want in general. Start asking what the kind of man you want desires in a woman. Then become that woman. Not for him, for you, because once you become her, the right man will recognize you instantly. You won't have to chase him. You won't have to beg for love or prove your worth. You'll just be, and that will be enough. So here's the real secret. What men truly want is a woman who knows exactly who she is and doesn't apologize for it. Men want peace, not performance. And I need women to sit with that sentence, not rush past it, not dilute it with ego or deflect it with assumptions. Just sit with it, because when a man is building, when a man is thinking beyond surface attraction, when a man has grown past the thrill of the chase and the addiction to the loudest voice in the room, he is craving peace like air. And that kind of man, he doesn't care about how many languages you speak or how many followers you have. He cares about one question: can I breathe around you? You see, we live in a generation where everyone is performing. We perform our beauty, we perform our emotions, we perform our relationships. Women have been conditioned to think that the more visible we are, the more valuable we are, that being constantly on is the only way to be chosen. But the truth is, men are exhausted by performance. They're tired of women who are constantly proving, posting, competing, and comparing. Because when a man has vision, when he's lived enough life to understand what's real, he doesn't want a show, he wants safety. A man doesn't come home looking for another battlefield. The world already challenges him, critiques him, pushes him. The last thing he wants is to walk into a home or a relationship that feels like another arena where he has to prove his worth. He doesn't want to be interrogated, tested, or micromanaged. He wants to be understood, appreciated, and most of all, at peace. But peace isn't about silence. It's not about saying nothing or doing nothing. Peace is presence. Peace is emotional maturity. Peace is a woman who knows who she is, and therefore doesn't need to control everything around her to feel safe. That's what makes a man rest in a woman's presence. Performance is exhausting. You're smiling when you don't mean it. You're laughing when it's not funny. You're dressing up for likes but crying in private. And deep down, you know it. You feel the pressure of perfection. But let me tell you, men with depth, men with purpose, men who have cultivated discipline within themselves, they see through all of it. They're not impressed by artificial femininity. They don't care about rehearsed conversations or exaggerated reactions. They are drawn to the woman who is at peace with herself, the woman who doesn't need to perform because who she is already enough. This is why emotional intelligence is so attractive, because a peaceful woman doesn't react out of insecurity. She doesn't weaponize silence. She doesn't escalate problems to prove a point. She understands timing. She knows when to speak and when to listen, when to lean in and when to let go. She's not loud for attention, and she's not quiet out of fear. She's grounded. She doesn't compete with her man. She complements him. She doesn't need to dominate the space. She fills it with grace. That is peace. That is power. There's this false belief that men want a challenge in the form of chaos. That the more difficult you are, the more he'll chase you. No, a healthy man, a man with options, with goals, with purpose, he won't chase chaos. He will walk away from it because he's not chasing emotional noise. He's chasing clarity. A woman who is emotionally regulated is rare, and that rarity is what men truly value when they're done playing games. Peace doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean letting everything slide. It means knowing how to deal with tension in a mature way. It means bringing a softness to conflict, not a storm. It means you know how to hold space without turning everything into a spectacle. And that's where true attraction is born, not in looks, but in energy. A man feels safest around the woman who isn't trying to dominate him, change him, or test him every chance she gets. She challenges him, yes, but from a place of love, not ego. She's not interested in winning. She's interested in building. Men want to be able to sit next to you and exhale. They want to be able to speak without being judged, to express without being analyzed, to dream without being mocked. But if every time he opens up, you turn it into a lecture or make it about yourself, he will shut down, because peace requires presence. Listening without the intention to reply. Being still without the need to fill every silence. Peace is knowing that your energy, your calm, your understanding is your true beauty. We underestimate how powerful feminine stillness is. Not laziness, not detachment, stillness, the ability to be calm in chaos, soft in conflict, warm in distance. That's what melts a man's armor, not manipulation, not seduction. Peace, that's what makes him stay, that's what makes him protect, that's what makes him pour. When a man senses that you are his peace in a world full of pressure, he will go to war for you. Because you are his sanctuary, not his source of stress. And let's be honest, some of you don't realize that the performance is actually pushing love away. You're trying to impress him with how independent you are, how high your standards are, how unbothered you seem. But what he's really looking for is not a resume, it's a connection. And connection doesn't come through performance. It comes through authenticity, through being real, being soft, being human. We've built this image of strength that is loud, defensive, always bossed up. But strength doesn't have to scream. Real strength is silent. It's knowing when to walk away without making a scene. It's knowing how to express a boundary without disrespect. It's staying grounded when everything else is spinning. And that's the kind of strength men crave, because it doesn't fight for attention, it commands it naturally. When a woman brings peace into a relationship, she brings out the best in a man. He becomes more generous, more open, more consistent, because love flourishes in safety, not in stress. A man won't open his heart to a woman who makes him feel like he's constantly under threat, but he will bloom in the arms of a woman who sees him without trying to fix him, who loves him without needing to change him, who believes in him without needing to control him. So many women think they need to be everything for a man. Cook like his mother, look like a model, speak like a therapist, earn like a CEO. But what if I told you the most valuable thing you could offer a man is emotional peace, that your ability to stay calm under pressure, to be soft when it matters, to hold space for his growth, that is what sets you apart. That's what stays in his mind long after beauty fades. Peace isn't something you give, it's something you become. And when you become that woman, men recognize it instantly. Not boys, not players, men. Men who have lived, who have failed, who have grown, who understand that beauty is common, but peace is rare. You don't have to be the loudest, you don't have to compete, you just have to be her. The woman who isn't performing, the woman who's already at peace with herself and invites others into that same atmosphere. If your presence creates more anxiety than comfort, that's not power, that's instability. And eventually, it exhausts even the strongest man, because love isn't supposed to feel like a test you're always failing. It's supposed to feel like a space where you're free to be, without judgment, without pressure, without performance. So if you're tired of attracting men who ghost, who play, who never stay, maybe it's time to stop performing. Stop trying to be the woman who checks every box, and start becoming the woman who feels like home. Not flashy, not noisy, just peaceful. And let me tell you, when a man finds that in you, he'll never let it go. Not because he needs to, but because he wants to. Because real peace, it's addictive. Confidence and self-worth are magnetic. And no, I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about walking into a room and making noise just to feel powerful. I'm talking about the kind of confidence that is quiet, the kind that doesn't seek approval, and the kind of self-worth that doesn't shrink to fit into places it has outgrown. That kind of energy, it's magnetic, it shifts atmospheres, it attracts not just attention, but respect. There's something undeniably powerful about a woman who knows who she is. She's not trying to impress anyone, not desperate to be validated, not anxiously seeking someone to complete her. She is whole, she is full, and she brings that fullness into everything she touches. When a woman carries herself like she is enough, she doesn't have to compete, she doesn't have to prove, her energy does the speaking for her. Her presence fills the room before her words even arrive. Men are not drawn to perfection, they're drawn to certainty. A woman who knows her value doesn't have to flaunt it. She walks differently, she speaks differently. She doesn't ask questions like, am I good enough? She already knows the answer. She doesn't lower her standards for attention. She doesn't beg to be noticed, because she understands that being seen by the wrong people is not a compliment. Being chosen by someone who doesn't value her is not a prize. When you carry confidence that's rooted in self-worth, not ego, not image, but truth, you naturally create boundaries, and those boundaries filter everything. They keep out the noise, they protect your peace, they repel those who come with shallow intentions, and they attract those who are ready to meet you at your level, not because you demand it, but because your energy requires it. Confidence is not loud, it doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't come from status or beauty or social media approval. It comes from knowing that no matter who stays or leaves, who claps or criticizes, you are still whole. You are still valuable. You are still you. That kind of inner certainty is what turns heads. It's what makes people stop and take notice, not because you tried to be seen, but because you were unapologetically standing in your truth. Self-worth is not about being better than others. It's about knowing you are enough as you are, that you don't need to settle, that love is not something you earn through suffering or silence, that relationships should never cost you your dignity. When a woman has self-worth, she stops chasing what isn't meant for her. She stops asking for closure from people who knew exactly what they were doing. She stops pouring into situations that leave her empty. And that's what becomes so magnetic, because people can feel when you don't need them to define you. You're not clinging. You're not desperate. You're not performing for approval. You're just being. And in that stillness, in that truth, you become powerful. Because you've detached from the outcome, you're not driven by fear. You're not asking, what if I'm not loved? You've already decided to love yourself so deeply that anything less than respect is no longer acceptable. Confidence shows up in your voice, in the way you say no without guilt, in the way you walk away from what confuses you instead of trying to decode it, in the way you don't explain your worth, you embody it. You live it. You don't try to convince anyone of your value. That's not your job. You just keep becoming the kind of woman who values herself, and let everything else fall into place accordingly. Men notice this. They may not always articulate it, but they feel it. The difference between a woman who wants attention and a woman who commands it is self-worth. The difference between a woman who's trying to be loved and a woman who already is love is confidence. Not the manufactured kind, not the I post pictures so I feel better kind, but the kind that comes from healing, from doing the work, from looking at your wounds and deciding they won't define you, from realizing that you've always been worthy. It just took you time to remember it. There is nothing more attractive to a masculine man than a woman who is at home in herself, a woman who is soft but not weak, a woman who is kind but not naive, a woman who gives without losing herself, who listens without losing her voice, who bends when needed but never breaks for people who wouldn't even bend for her. That is confidence, that is self-worth, and that energy, it stays with people long after you've left the room. In a world that tries to monetize insecurity, a confident woman is a rebellion, because she refuses to be defined by society's ever-changing standards. She doesn't need 10 compliments to feel good. She doesn't need a man's attention to feel seen. She wakes up, looks in the mirror, and recognizes herself, not because she's perfect, but because she's real. She's done with pretending, done with shrinking, done with apologizing for wanting more than surface-level connection. Confidence doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you clear. You become clear on what you deserve, on who you are, on what kind of love you're willing to receive. And that clarity scares the wrong people, but it attracts the right ones, because you're no longer sending mixed signals. You're not half in, half out. You're not unsure of yourself, and that makes all the difference. Because when a man sees a woman who respects herself, he knows he has to come correct. He knows games won't work, manipulation won't work. He either rises to meet you or watches you walk away, and walking away is no longer your weakness. It's your wisdom, it's your strength, because you've learned that staying in spaces where your worth is questioned is too expensive. Your peace, your energy, your time, it's all too valuable now, and that value, that awareness of your own sacredness, that is what makes you powerful. Not because others approve of you, but because you no longer seek their approval to feel complete. You don't chase anymore. You don't beg. You don't try to make someone see your value. You live it, you breathe it, you radiate it, and that's what makes people pay attention. Not the makeup, not the clothes, not the surface, but the essence, the inner glow of a woman who is rooted, who is grounded, who is not easily shaken. That woman becomes unforgettable, not because she tried to be, but because she chose to be herself fully and fearlessly. Self-worth changes your standards, it changes your boundaries, it changes the way you speak, the way you dress, the way you show up. You start to say no more often, not to punish but to protect. You say yes more intentionally, not to please but to align. You don't tolerate disrespect, not because you're difficult, but because you're finally in alignment with your worth. When you carry self-worth, you don't just attract attention, you attract purpose. You attract people who recognize your value without needing you to lower your voice, your standards, or your expectations. You attract partners, not projects, lovers, not leeches. You attract energy that matches yours, and suddenly life feels lighter, relationships feel more peaceful, love feels more honest, because you've done the inner work, and it shows. That is the true magnetism of a confident woman. She's not chasing anything. She's becoming everything. She's not trying to be chosen. She's choosing herself. She's not asking, will I ever be loved? She's saying, I am love. I am whole. I am already enough. And from that place of wholeness, she receives not just attention, but the kind of love that matches her depth, her softness, her strength, and her worth. Femininity is not weakness. It never has been. It's only been misinterpreted, misunderstood, and misused by those who feared its power. Society has trained women to believe that to be strong, they must act hard, that to be respected, they must suppress their softness, that to be taken seriously, they must wear armor, not grace, and in doing so, we've confused power with performance. We've abandoned the very essence of what makes a woman magnetic, her ability to feel deeply, speak intuitively, love fiercely, and move with quiet strength. Femininity is power because it doesn't scream, it transforms. It doesn't force, it influences. It doesn't dominate, it leads, and that kind of leadership is rare. The kind of leadership that doesn't need to overshadow anyone to shine. That doesn't compete with masculinity, but complements it. That doesn't suppress strength, but expresses it in a way that heals, inspires, and builds. A feminine woman isn't weak, she's intentional. She knows when to step forward and when to step back, not out of submission, but out of wisdom. She knows how to read a room without needing to control it. She speaks truth, but doesn't need to shout to be heard. Her power is not in her volume, it's in her presence, and that presence is unforgettable. The world tries to shame femininity because it cannot control it. A woman who is soft yet strong, kind yet assertive, nurturing yet unshakably rooted in her values. That woman is dangerous to any system built on fear and manipulation. Because she doesn't fall for superficial promises. She doesn't chase validation. She doesn't conform to trends. She knows her value and she moves with it unapologetically. Femininity is emotional intelligence. It's being able to see through masks, to read between the lines, to feel what isn't said, and respond with depth instead of reaction. It's in the way a woman holds space for others, how she nurtures not just with her hands, but with her energy. How she heals rooms just by showing up in truth. How she can remain soft in a world that keeps trying to harden her. That softness is not fragility, it's resilience. It's the ability to carry pain and still choose compassion. To face heartbreak and still believe in love. To be surrounded by chaos and still create peace. Don't confuse quietness for lack of power. Don't mistake gentleness for weakness. A woman rooted in her femininity is not passive. She's precise. She doesn't act out of ego. She acts out of understanding. She doesn't need to overpower anyone because she's mastered herself. That mastery is strength. That grace under pressure, that poise in conflict, that ability to love deeply without losing herself. That is power. Femininity isn't about dresses and makeup. It's not an aesthetic. It's an energy. It's how a woman carries herself when no one is watching. It's how she responds when she's tested. It's the way she uplifts instead of competes. It's in her silence, her laughter, her intuition. It's in her ability to embrace vulnerability without apology, to cry without shame, to feel without restraint, because to be fully feminine is to be fully human, and there is nothing weak about that. Men don't need women who try to be like them. They don't need more masculine energy in a relationship. They need balance. They need complementarity. They need the calm to their storm, the softness to their edge, the empathy to their logic. A woman in her feminine doesn't try to be the man. She empowers the man to be his best self simply by being hers. That's the beauty of divine polarity, not competition, but completion, not submission, but synergy. When a woman embraces her femininity, she begins to understand her influence. She sees how her softness disarms egos, how her patience diffuses tension, how her compassion heals wounds that words cannot reach. And the more she understands her worth, the more she protects her energy. She doesn't give it away cheaply. She doesn't overextend for people who haven't earned her presence. She understands that her nurturing is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. Femininity is not for the faint-hearted. It takes courage to be soft in a hard world. It takes strength to trust when you've been betrayed. It takes power to remain gentle when anger would be easier. Femininity is not about being liked. It's about being true. And sometimes being true to your feminine nature will make others uncomfortable, especially those who benefit from your self-denial. But a woman who loves herself deeply, who honors her emotions, her body, her intuition, that woman doesn't shrink anymore. She rises, and when she rises, everything around her changes. We have to stop telling women that femininity is weakness. That softness is a liability. That tears are signs of failure. These are lies we've been fed to keep us disconnected from our true power. Because a woman in her full feminine essence doesn't just survive, she thrives. She creates, she births ideas, nurtures visions, holds families, builds businesses, writes stories, prays with power, walks with grace, and holds the capacity to transform everything she touches. And no, femininity doesn't mean passivity. A feminine woman can make decisions, she can run empires, she can speak boldly, lead powerfully, and draw boundaries that protect her peace. But she does it from a place of inner alignment, not masculine mimicry. Her power is rooted in presence, not pressure, in truth, not tactics. She knows she doesn't have to be hard to be heard. She doesn't have to be loud to be respected. Her essence does the talking before she even opens her mouth. When you see a woman who walks in her feminine power, you know it. She carries herself with elegance, not ego. She speaks with love, not fear. She listens with empathy, not judgment. She doesn't seek to control anyone because she's in control of herself. She doesn't need to chase because she attracts. And what she attracts isn't just attention, it's alignment. With the right people, the right energy, the right love. And the truth is, men who are secure in themselves crave this kind of femininity. Not because it makes them feel superior, but because it inspires them to be better. A feminine woman calls forth greatness without even trying. She reflects the emotional world that many men have been taught to suppress. She offers a safe space without compromising her own. She doesn't belittle, she believes. She doesn't compete, she completes. And that kind of woman is unforgettable. To embrace femininity is to reclaim your voice in a world that has tried to silence you. It's to say, I can be soft and still be strong. I can feel deeply and still lead powerfully. I can love fully and still walk away when I'm not valued. That kind of balance is rare. That kind of beauty is rare. But it is possible, and it is powerful. Femininity doesn't make you less. It makes you more of who you truly are. It brings you back to the woman you were before the world told you who to be, before heartbreak made you guarded, before trauma made you hard, before pain made you forget that your softness was never your weakness. It was your weapon, your superpower, your divine edge. And once you rediscover that version of yourself, the one who feels without shame, who moves without fear, who loves without losing, you become unstoppable, not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you're no longer at war with yourself. You've stopped apologizing for being emotional. You've stopped hiding your sensitivity. You've stopped numbing your intuition. You've stopped dimming your light just to fit in. You are no longer afraid to be seen in your fullness, in your femininity, in your truth. That's where your power lives, not in perfection, not in pretending, but in presence, in softness, in love, in emotional depth, in the divine ability to create life, not just in the womb, but with your words, your touch, your heart. To create safety, connection, vision, beauty, peace, that is power. The kind of power that changes generations, the kind of power that doesn't destroy, it builds, and the kind of power the world needs more of. So, the next time someone tells you femininity is weakness, smile. Let them think what they want, because a woman who has reclaimed her softness is a woman who has reclaimed her power. And nothing is more dangerous to the systems of control than a woman who loves herself deeply, lives authentically, and leads from the sacred space of her feminine heart. Real over perfect. That's the choice every powerful woman makes when she finally decides to stop performing and start living. Because perfection is a trap, a never-ending race toward approval, applause, and acceptance that always leaves you feeling empty. But being real, that's liberation, that's alignment, that's truth, and truth has a frequency that you can't fake. It can't be copied. It can't be edited, filtered, or performed. It just is. It shows up raw, unpolished, and unapologetic. And that is what the world actually craves. Women have been conditioned to strive for perfection. Perfect looks, perfect behavior, perfect success, perfect relationships. You are taught that if you could just be perfect enough, then you'll finally be worthy, you'll finally be loved. But here's the truth. Perfection doesn't earn love. It earns pressure, it earns burnout, it earns isolation, because the more perfect you try to be, the more you lose touch with the very soul of who you are. You trade authenticity for applause, you trade peace for performance. And no matter how much you accomplish, it's never enough, because perfection is a moving target, one you were never meant to hit. But when a woman decides to be real, really real, everything shifts. Because realness carries an energy that draws the right people in and pushes the wrong people out. It's clarity, it's self-respect, it's choosing depth over display, substance over spectacle, truth over image. It's not about being flawless, it's about being rooted, grounded, present. It's showing up with your scars, not hiding them. It's sharing your story without editing the pain out. It's owning your insecurities, not masking them. It's being able to say, I'm still healing, but I'm not hiding. That is what real looks like, and that is what strength feels like. Real is messy, it's emotional, it's unpredictable, but it's powerful, because only when you're real can you connect deeply. Only when you're real can you love freely. Only when you're real can you heal fully. There's no transformation in pretending. There's no breakthrough in perfection. There's only more pressure, more pretending, more distance between the life you live and the life you actually want. Women weren't born to be perfect. They were born to be whole. And wholeness includes the messy parts, the doubt, the tears, the regrets, the heartbreak, the shame, the parts you've tried to hide from the world. Those parts don't disqualify you. They make you human. They make you relatable, they make you real, and that kind of realness, that emotional depth, that raw honesty, it's rare. That's why it's magnetic. That's why people feel safe around it. Because there's nothing more comforting in a world full of masks than someone who has taken theirs off. Perfection distances, realness connects. Perfection impresses, realness transforms. You don't build intimacy by showing people the polished version of your life. You build intimacy by showing them who you are when no one's clapping. When you're vulnerable, when you're uncertain, when you're in the valley, not just on the mountaintop, because those moments, those quiet, unseen, unfiltered moments, are what make you powerful beyond measure. When you've faced your pain, you no longer fear it. When you've stopped hiding your flaws, no one can use them against you. And when you're no longer chasing perfect, you finally start attracting real. There's something beautiful about a woman who chooses honesty over image, who chooses self-awareness over self-promotion, who chooses integrity over illusion. She walks differently. She speaks differently. Her presence is felt, not just seen. And the right people recognize her not because she's perfect, but because she's real. You can feel her truth in the way she talks. You can feel her wisdom in the way she listens. She doesn't need to impress you because she's impressed by her own growth. She doesn't need to perform because she's rooted in her purpose. The problem is, too many women are exhausted by the act of being perfect, the act of being liked, the act of being needed. But they keep performing because they're afraid of what will happen when they stop. Will people still love me if they see the real me? Will I still be valued if I stop giving everything to everyone? Will I still be enough if I don't look like the image they expect? These are the questions that haunt perfectionists. But here's the answer: yes, not only will the right people still love you, they will only love you once you become real. Because no one can love a mask. No one can connect to an illusion. You can only be loved to the depth you're willing to be seen. And the truth is, when you choose real over perfect, you start building a life that feels like home, not a performance stage. You stop needing everyone to clap for you because you're clapping for yourself. You stop needing every moment to look like a highlight reel because you've found peace in the behind the scenes. You stop needing to be everything for everyone because you've finally started being something to yourself. Realness doesn't mean you're always strong. It means you're always honest. It doesn't mean you've figured it all out. It means you've stopped pretending that you have to. It doesn't mean you don't care about growth. It means you don't chase growth to prove you're worthy. You grow because you are worthy. There's no more proving. There's only becoming, and let's be honest, there's nothing more tiring than perfection. It demands so much but gives so little in return. It makes you feel like you're never doing enough, never being enough, never achieving enough. Even when you're winning, it whispers that you're still falling behind. But realness is freedom. It says, I'm not here to be perfect. I'm here to be present. I'm here to be true. I'm here to be whole. The most attractive thing about a woman isn't her perfection. It's her self-acceptance. It's the way she owns her story. It's the way she doesn't apologize for who she's become. It's the way she walks with scars and still smiles. That kind of woman doesn't need validation because she's validated by her own journey. She's not afraid of imperfection because she sees beauty in it. She's not afraid to be misunderstood because she no longer lives for the crowd. She lives for her truth. Real over perfect means you no longer shrink yourself to be palatable. It means you don't let shame tell your story anymore. It means you choose to honor your experience, even when it's messy, even when it's not Instagram worthy, even when it's unpopular, because your story, the real one, is what will heal someone else. Not your highlight reel, not your perfection, your truth. So no, you don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You don't need to be flawless to be loved. You don't need to be polished to be respected. You just need to be real, and realness starts with self-honesty. Can you look in the mirror and say, I see you, I know you, I honor you, That's the beginning of every transformation, not in changing who you are, but in finally seeing who you've always been underneath the masks. There's a sacred kind of beauty in women who show up as they are. They become mirrors for others to do the same. They give silent permission to let the guard down, to breathe again, to feel again, to stop trying so hard to be everything for everyone and just be you. That's not weakness, that's not laziness, that's divine alignment. That's where real power begins, not in the performance but in the presence. If the world had more women who were real instead of perfect, there would be less competition and more connection. Less judgment and more understanding, less burnout and more balance. Because when one woman stands in her truth, she lights the path for another, and then a generation. That's how change happens. Not through image, but through intimacy, not through perfection, but through presence.